Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world premiere of Thina from SYREN Modern Dance. I'm James Wetzel. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the producer of adult programs at the Museum of Science Boston. I'm coming to you from our Suit Cabot studio, and I am so excited to be reunited with our friends from SYREN. We first had the opportunity to collaborate with them this past winter on a live performance of their hit show, Tick Tock. And our hope and our goal was to welcome them back to the museum season to season with a brand new show. Unfortunately, right now, we cannot all be together in the same room, but we are thrilled that SYREN agreed to pivot and still collaborate with us on this digital experience tonight. They have, over the past couple months, been developing, choreographing, rehearsing, and now tonight performing a new piece completely virtually and through Zoom. And we are so excited to be premiering the piece tonight. It is a testament to the artistic innovation and creation that is persisting during the pandemic, and we're so excited to share it with you all this evening. And tonight is a part of our current fall virtual season of adult programming, which ends tomorrow night. We have one more fantastic event after this evening. It's a incredible live music show with Julie Rhodes. So I encourage you to go to our website at mos.org/adults. You can register for your spot for that event. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our email list, because even though our fall season is wrapping up, our winter spring season is just around the corner, and we will be announcing that full lineup very soon, and you won't want to miss any of those details. I'll be back a little bit later on tonight with a conversation and a Q&A with the team from SYREN. So if you have questions out there, you can submit those at any point starting right now by going to slido.com and entering the code SYREN, SYREN. Once again, that's Slido, SLIDO.com with the code SYREN, SYREN. I need to thank our friends from the Lowell Institute for their continued support of the adult programming. Without them, we would not be here tonight. This event would not be happening, nor would it be free. So please join me in giving a huge virtual round of applause and thanks to the Lowell Institute. And finally, after the show tonight, I ask all of you to go to donate.mos.org/MOS at home and make a gift to allow us to keep bringing free STEM experiences just like tonight into all of your homes. Once again, that's donate.mos.org/MOS at home. But now it is my pleasure to introduce the stars of the evening. Please join me in welcoming to your screens SYREN Modern Dance.
Thank you, James, and hello, everyone. I am Lynn Peterson, and Kate Amand and myself are the co-artistic directors of SYREN Modern Dance. And we are joined here this evening alongside us, depending on which side or below us, with our wonderful company members, Darcy, Rivkins, Jessica, Victoria, and Alice. And we are so thrilled and thank everyone at MOS for bringing us here this evening. SYREN Modern Dance is a New York City-based company, and this is our 18th season of creating and sharing dance. And throughout those 18 years, we have had the great honor and pleasure of performing in a myriad of venues, theaters, art galleries, art museums, science museums, classrooms on the grass, in a showmobile, in a classroom, in a library. But never before have we performed virtually. So thank you for being with us for this first ever experience.
Yes, I'll just second that. Thank you for joining us online here. We're really excited to be here. As Lynn mentioned, I'm Kate Amand, choreographer for SYREN and of Thina tonight, which we will get to. I figured first I would talk a little bit just about the process and inception and what we're going to see tonight. I'll start by saying that it's a pretty unique experience to be sharing space with our audience, everybody coming from such a similar situation. We've all lived these last 8 or 9 months together in the world, and we've all had our own experiences through that, but it has been a significant one that we have shared. So being here present with you, even virtually, there's a different and real connection, and we're grateful that you're here for that. Living through COVID-19 from, its start here in the States in March, through the spring, through the summer, through the fall. Like, I feel like every month has been its own, every week has been its own journey for sure. A lot of the words that come to mind for myself through this has, especially in the beginning, the big words: fear, loss, isolation, desire for connection. These were things that were on top of my mind and heart, especially in the spring, as well as shock. There are a lot of shock and fear. As the months started passing, that desire for connection, I think, is what ignited this process that you're seeing tonight. At first, we thought, what can we do? We can show up. So we just decided we would show up together. We picked a rehearsal time that we were used to having Friday mornings, and we literally just logged on to Zoom, and we were there to chat and show up for each other in a time when we weren't sure what else we could do, and it felt right. Sometimes that was a little bit of therapy, sometimes it was a little bit of movement, sometimes it was a little bit of both, sometimes it was a few sun salutations and how are you doing? But we kept showing up. And as those months, those weeks and months ticked away, there became a time when Lynn and I realized it was time to move. Frankly, we were ready to do something, yet everything was different. We had no idea when any theaters were going to open. We had no idea when we were going to be able to dance together in New York again, but it felt like every week we waited for those answers to somehow appear. We just began to realize that was not going to be the reality. We don't know. We still don't know a lot, but we certainly didn't know anything at all in June, or through the summer. So we thought, what can we do? We reflected and we talked, and we said we can do what we've always done. And when we follow our guts, it is creating and sharing movement. Okay, how can we do that? Well, everyone has these screens, so we're gonna do it. So we just picked ourselves up by the bootstraps and said, let's dance. So we knew we had to make something. We wanted to, and we had to. So we asked everyone, are you on board? And these beautiful people here said, for what? You know what? Sure. We'll figure it out. I had some ideas. The feelings are so raw at a time like this. And I thought, what is stirring? Okay, this desire to connect, these feelings of fear. When else has the world sort of collectively felt all this? And I started digging into the Spanish flu. 100 years ago, a lot of things were similar as far as the feeling of the global community. So as a point of departure, I usually try to find an inspiration and a piece of music. And the more I dig into both of those things, they tend to coalesce, and then the idea is there and we begin. So I started listening to a lot of music that was composed during the time of Spanish flu, and beautiful as it may be, it's also a little bit freaky. And some of it just wasn't the sound and it wasn't inspiring me to create what I knew we were going to, if that makes any sense. So I listened and I listened. Then I heard a piece of music floating from the other room called Influenza 1918. I had no idea what the piece was called at the time. I was playing, I think I had started a radio station based on, I don't know, yeah. The deep well of finding music. But I stopped in my tracks and I went to go see what it was. And it was a Reuben Caluza composition that was written in 1918. And a gentleman by the name of Philip Miller had, in the time now of COVID, restructured it and had remastered and made a new recording with his colleagues of musicians and vocalists from around the world who could not be together. And Philip was in South Africa, and he had vocalists, friends, people he's worked years with, literally send voicemails with their parts, that he had sent them to sing, and he threaded them together into this beautiful piece of music you will hear tonight. And this became the inspiration for Thina. I got in touch with Philip and, via Instagram direct message, because how else would you reach out? And eventually we got each other's real email addresses, and he was wonderful to collaborate with. He actually ended up extending the piece of music a little bit for us. We worked out a way that we could use this music in good faith and for programs like this. So we thought that we would start by by reading you the translation. It is sung in Zulu, and we are going to read the English translation. Both versions are available on our website, and I believe there's somewhere you can click in here for the virtual program, so you can read both versions, English or Zulu. But we thought it might be nice as a company to each say the words for the English translation of this song. So I will begin. In 1918, there was an epidemic of a certain disease. This disease was called influenza. It killed all our relatives we loved. Oh, mother, father, sister, and you, brother.
Other families, everybody died. It killed young men and young women and chose the best people. It killed even the handsome and beautiful young ones.
It killed all those who were still in the adolescent stage. It also killed the ones who were engaged for marriage. It killed all those who were just married.
It was as if there was a black cloud on earth, as if it had come for the young ones. It was better with the grown-ups, but bad with the young ones.
Parents left orphans in sorrow, worried with nobody to help them. Well, today we have forgotten the sorrow.
It was also like that to those who were crossing Canaan. When they were in difficulty, they regretted. When all was still and well, they felt happy. They never thought of their Creator.
Only those who worshipped him went through. Most of them died in the wilderness. This is a warning to you, brothers and sisters. Don't give in to temptation.
Now these words, as Pete mentioned, were written by Reuben Caluza, the composer of Influenza 1918. Mr. Caluza lived from 1895 to 1969, and he was one of the leading South African composers of the 1920s and 30s. He became known for his ragtime songs in the Zulu language. His choral works toured internationally, and he was the first African in South Africa to receive a degree in music. Mr. Caluza was 23 when he wrote these lyrics. And we share them with you not because you need to memorize them or because we're going to translate each word for our movement. That's not how we move and create work. Some people might, and that's great, but it's not about it being a literal translation that you need to remember, but it's a frame of reference, and it's important to understand what we're hearing when we're moving and have respect for the words that are being spoken, and so that's also why we wanted to share them with you tonight.
So, of course, I was doing some comparisons to how we are feeling and the lives we're living now as compared to during the time of Spanish flu. And also just every week that went by and continues to go by has its own sort of like, I don't know, for me, its own like identity, kind of all over the map. But I think that's how we're all kind of living a little bit week to week right now. I would like to bring up a slideshow, actually, to just share with you some images that were inspiring to me throughout this process, listening to the music, starting to rehearse with the company. Slide one, I don't know, this struck me as just, it's a dancer in the middle of New York City in a mask and empty streets. The very real feeling of so many of our colleagues, friends, networks, students, former bosses, you name it, are suffering. First and foremost, physically, many have lost people, many have suffered themselves physically, but also in their livelihood. And it's painful. It's painful to bear witness to and be part of in the time that we're in. So just sort of a nod to the times that we're going through as an artistic community. I can only speak specific to New York. I'm sure all over the world artists can relate, but it struck a chord to see that and to still not know if and when or how this is going to feel when one day those streets are, filled in some way again. Slide two, I believe is, this struck me. I think this was actually taken in Belgium. Just like our new familiarity with technology is sort of amazing to me, and this duality of feeling so isolated with the lack of physical contact and just lack of shared spaces, but yet we are on our things now, and I've connected with people that I haven't talked to in years. So there's also the like flip side of the coin where, and a lot of seniors I know in my family, a lot of older people who weren't necessarily used to FaceTime that comfortably yet or Zoom, are hopping on because that's what we got to do now. So there's this sort of element that's fun to see technology evolve in new ways and to new communities right now. Slide 3. It struck me, I remember around Easter time, there's a priest in my family, and I specifically remember him asking us to send a family picture so he could place it on the chair during Easter service. And I thought, what a cool idea. I don't know. It's so sad and yet so beautiful. And like everybody is just doing what they can to keep things as real and close to their heart as we can. And I thought that was a beautiful depiction of, that, of course, not just in churches, but I've heard of similar things happening in other venues. But I thought it was a sobering testament to where we're at, but also beautiful because they're present in the best way they can, and we're all trying to be there and continue to be there. And the next slide. Do you have your toilet paper yet? No, don't panic. They say don't hoard the toilet paper, but it's real, and I understand it too because I go into the grocery store and I'm thinking that maybe I should grab that bulk package. But I giggle, but it's real, and fear is deep and it's scary, and you want to protect yourself and your family. And I remember walking through the grocery stores to these empty shelves and no meat and no paper products, and it's scary when you see that. And I can only imagine what our children, the sensation that must have felt like to see empty shelves and people panicking. So that resonated. Next slide. This was a tough one. This was one of the first ones, and we ended up integrating a gesture here we'll talk about soon. There's not many words I can or need to say. The feeling of loss is tremendous and hard to even fathom or talk about. This one also struck me because it's a child. I myself have 2 children, and the thought of what they're going through, not just in the tremendous loss of people who have lost people in their family, but the distance, the loss of some friendships, the inability to understand, especially young kids, what is going on and why can't we hug? It's hard to see, and we're working on it, but this one struck for a number of reasons. Almost done. Next. Similar, the playgrounds. Still we drive by places where children could play without even a thought, 11 months ago. And we're here with them either being treated with various chemicals or blocked off entirely. And just something so pure, like our kids playing together, is now such a production and a thought and a which pod, and is this in my family, or have we all tested, or no, we can't do that, we're just going to go for a hike. So many thoughts and considerations into what would have gone completely not even a thought a year ago. Next. And hope. And I just love how imperfect that little cutie's face is. And there's been a lot of support for essential workers and the hearts on the windows, and again just this feeling of hope and connection and pushing through. That struck me as kind of that. And I think there's 2 more. Rows and rows. This was taken during the time of Spanish flu, just rows and rows of ill people. And we see the, stadiums being converted, waiting for if patients are going to be there. I think they did that in New York with one of the ships. And I just was very taken aback by the amount of space needed to care for those that need to be cared for. And it's also scary. Next. these like all these maps all the time that we're seeing on the news, and it strikes me as, you know, people, including myself, are interested in how the virus is tracking, but also at a glance, it's also interconnected, and there are many sides to seeing something like that. And yes, the virus is traveling all over the world, but also there are things connecting us throughout the entire world, and there's something to be said for that too. And I think one more. This was, of course, during time of Spanish flu, and something struck me about the framing of her face and almost just her eyes and how she was near the camera. And I saw this one during a time when we were working on thinking about getting closer to the camera in the choreography, and just like kind of how that would, we're all pretty, actually, I'm looking at our screen now, we're pretty much in that same like relationship to the frame. And it inspired me to explore a little bit more of that within the work. So that's just some to share a little bit of the points of departure. Thank you for running the slideshow, MOS team. And dancers, why don't we stand up? Because I thought that before we share Thina with you, I could just give you 3 examples of how we came up with some of the material. And I have, I'm going to run some raw music from my Bluetooth speaker because we figure out how to make it work, right? The dancers are just going to show you some parts. The first thing we're going to do, guys, is the hand gesture segment. I just talked about that slide with the little girl looking at her. I believe it was her older sister. And we'll take it, you guys will take it from Influenza and then on, yeah, exactly, through, maybe you can take it from Angel Jump through this and then through that guy. All right, let me get the music ready for you here. Sorry. Welcome to Dance on Zoom. Good. Okay, the second little segment we'll show you is sometimes I give them, we can talk a little bit more about how we worked in the discussion after in the Q&A. Sometimes I give them a chance just to, as if we were in the studio, work on a small assignment with, I like to call it nothing in the way. I gave them no like emotional part for this assignment. I said, just make a phrase of 10 counts on the downbeat, any positions you want. And they worked in trios. And so we'll show it. Let's show it in context, guys. So it starts with Darcy's trio, then Lynn's trio, and then do it all together. So they do one trio does theirs, the other trio does theirs, and then they actually do them simultaneously. And I'll just show that whole section. Good. And the last thing we'll show sort of before the piece is coming close to the camera. We were working on just being close in the frame here, and some gestures. I think the words we were exploring were push, pull, and interweave. And again, they worked in trios, but we'll show this exactly as it appears in the piece. So we'll take it from the, I mean, you guys stay there, but musically from the travel to the camera.
Beautiful. Thanks, you guys. And as you've hopefully been able to tell, we are very much live with you this evening, which was something that was very important to Kate and I as we spoke about how to share dance again in this world, for a myriad of reasons that you can ask me about later in the Q&A, but preserving as much of the live experience as possible was really something that was paramount to us. That said, we also learned since March that to use any of these platforms to present high quality sound and highly musical dancing, which SYREN's work is, in unison, or even if not unison, in canon or counterpoint or whatever you're trying to do, is virtually impossible because of the delays that we experience through technology, because we're not living and breathing in the same room. And after much in-depth reflection and discussion with the MOS team, out of an effort to present you with the highest quality viewing experience, to do justice to this beautiful piece of music, to allow us to dance as close to in unison as we would love and hope and wish to, which is not, I mean, I wish I could express how the breath of being in the same room, it just doesn't travel over the interwebs. But anyway, you will be seeing a recording of Thina tonight. We recorded it for you on Friday. Nobody has seen it. It has not been edited. It is as we were standing in our screens and our boxes as Kate worked and choreographed. There are many beautiful dance films being made right now. We did not wish to make one. That is not what we do. But we do want to share this dance with you now. And so please enjoy Thina.
Ngonyaka ka-1918 saqedwa ukufa esikubiza ngokuthi kuyi-influenza. Yasiqeda izihlobo esizithandayo,
And we are back after the world premiere of Thina from the amazing faces that are on your screen right now, SYREN Modern Dance. Once again, I'm James Wetzel. I'm the producer of adult programs at the Museum of Science Boston, and I am so excited to be here with this incredible company. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into your process and how this piece was developed. Again, this was the premiere. This is the first time this has been shared with anyone. We're so honored. We thank you for allowing us to be the ones to do so with our audiences. We had the pleasure of hosting SYREN this past winter that feels like 10 years ago with their hit show, Tick Tock, which people are still raving about up here in Boston, and our audiences just loved. So it's so exciting to see you tonight. First off, how is everyone doing? I know, Kate, you just took us through that presentation of inspiration for this piece, and it kind of threw me back to the different stages of the past couple of months. I know we've all been going through it, but artists especially definitely have as well. So how's everyone doing?
Good.
Good.
Making it.
Making it work, Rivkins. Yes, that's kind of how we all are. Well, I know I'm doing a little bit better after having just experienced that. I know our audiences as well. It was so exhilarating getting to see not only performance happen, but like new performance, new work being performed. It was really special. So thank you again. We are going to jump in and get some of their insights, but as a reminder, everyone out there watching, we want your questions. So you can submit those at any time by going to the address, one of the addresses that's scrolling at the top of your screens. That's slido.com, SLIDO.com. And you just enter that code SYREN, SYREN. You can submit as many questions as you want. We'll try and get through those. And then the other address will take you to that virtual program that Kate mentioned earlier, so you can learn a little bit more about the company and this piece specifically. I want to start by, I'm assuming that many people watching with us tonight are either fans of yours over the past 18 seasons, I believe it was, or got to experience TikTok, but some may be new. So Lynn, could you start by just introducing the company a little bit and talk about the mission behind your work? Because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Kate and I founded SYREN in 2003. Pretty fresh out of college with a pretty simple and clear mission that I think has still carried through all these years later, and that's to really use dance to allow us to be curious and create and connect and to collaborate. And that means on kind of these concentric circles. That happens in the studio with our company, that happens in studios when we teach, that happens with the audience, that all the pieces we've made, different subject matters, it's allowing us to bring dance to people, to meet people, to have conversations, and to allow people to come into dance. We dance, we love dance, and we know many people do, but we also feel like we have work to do to bridge a gap in allowing more people to feel welcome into dance.
Wonderful. And I'm assuming that outside of COVID times, before and hopefully very soon will be in the after, that the way that you approach your work and developing a new piece is very different than how you did so this time around with Thina. And once again, this piece was completely developed and choreographed and rehearsed and performed, like we just saw, virtually separated and through these little screens and on Zoom. And I just want to hear everyone's thoughts and their personal sort of experience in developing this piece. And I think, Kate, let's start with you from a choreography standpoint. Like, how did you even begin to approach this?
I think one thing that was really important is we wanted to keep the core of SYREN true. We wanted to, I know it sounds a little bit like, I don't know, dreamlike, but it was so important to us that we knew off the bat we were not going to make a dance film. We knew off the bat that we wanted to make this work as close to our process as we possibly could. Yes, we had screens to deal with, so like by nature it was going to be different, but we were really determined to keep the, for lack of a better word, and I actually think it's a really fitting word, the intimacy of creating a piece there. I think we succeeded in, at least process-wise, feeling that way as best we could. We used breakout rooms. It was really fun. It was just, you find tools, you make it work, you have to. So I actually think that starting to meet together in the spring and summer really helped, because we kind of knew like where Darcy was and where Jess was. Like we kind of knew everybody was spread out. We knew everybody's story through it. We were staying connected so that when we entered the studio, it still felt like family. So I think we kept a lot of what's important to us as we entered this new world.
I can interject one quick thing that I think is maybe a fun tidbit to know. We're so incredibly lucky that all of these artists on screen, we've all been working together for at least 2 years, and then some even many more years. So and we've created, this was the original cast of Tick Tock, the creating cast of Tick Tock here. So people that have gone through a deep creative process together. And not to say we would not have done it had a new company member been involved, but I think already having such a shared history and language, and I know, where Rivkins likes to stay in the studio. I know what Alice does before she, starts warm up. Like I can feel them next to me when we're warming up, even though we're not in the same room together. I think that gave us a lot of comfort in at least trying to do it this way.
I love that, and that's Thank you for that perfect segue, Lynn, because I want to move to sort of the performers and the dancers and your experience and what this was like, because it had to have been very wild and different from past work, both with SYREN and just in other projects. I think before I do, I just want to confirm, I believe everyone is back in their personal spaces in New York City or in Connecticut. But when we first began this process, you were all spread out throughout the country, correct?
Yeah, I think, Jess, you were even in Canada for some of it, right?
So
I started this rehearsal process on the patio at my parents' house in Canada.
Wow.
So
I love it. So international. And I think it's just a really important part of the storytelling, I think, of what you have accomplished, because not only are you not together, but you're dealing with different time zones and also just the emotional and personal stresses that we all were in living in this new world. And so I just think it's a fascinating part that I wanted to point out. So switching to the dancers, I'd love to hear how each of you approach this process and what it was like to create without being in the same room. So we heard a little bit from Lynn. Darcy, how about you start us out? What was this experience like for you?
Yeah, I think it was really great to be connected all together, even though it was not in a physical space, which the first rehearsal was, I think, more of a celebration. But then after that, you kind of felt the like, oh, I want to touch you. I want to like breathe the same air as you. But we made it work, and someday we will make it work in person.
Yeah. And how about you, Alice? What was this like for you?
It's definitely different. You know, before COVID, you're very used to, you know, getting your warm-up clothes ready, packing your bag, going into the subway, going to the studio, warming up and all of that. And as you're warming up, you're breathing with each other and you're connecting with each other. So it's definitely different, where in this process, it's like, oh, I wake up, I go to this other room, I set up my laptop, I'm basically ready. I don't have to like set things up to go anywhere. So it's definitely different. And definitely with the screen, it's different from a mirror. You know, when we're learning choreography with a mirror in front of us, we have all these different perspectives of how to learn it and seeing it in different ways and watching our peers. But when it's in Zoom, that is the only screen. And it's the same with when I know that some company members are teaching right now as well. So it's a very different process, learning choreography through a Zoom screen, whereas in person. So yeah.
That's fascinating. I hadn't even thought of that. And Rivkins, how about you? Is this your new favorite way to learn choreography through Zoom?
I mean, not really. I'm more of an in-studio kind of person. But I will say, like, learning choreography on Zoom does help you, like, pick up faster a little bit. Like, for me, as a dancer's perspective, it's like you have to, like, really, like, pay attention and, like, really, like, be honed in. But I'm more of, like, in studio, I love to feel the vibe, the energy, breathing, the music. It's just, like, it's a whole different sensation than, like, being on Zoom.
Yeah. And Victoria, some other members already kind of touched on this, but one thing I always love when I listen to you as a company talk about creating is, Lynn, you sort of touch base on it, but for lack of a better word, there's a certain sense of like artistic intimacy that you have as dancers, and you're hearing each other breathing and you're feeling each other's sort of emotional and physical movements in the moment, and that helps you sort of connect and play off of one another. Victoria, did you feel like this intimacy was removed because we were in this digital realm, or were there other ways of sort of recreating that connection?
I don't think it was entirely removed, but I think there was elements of it that it was a very bittersweet feeling, because Kate and Lynn did an amazing job. They of connecting all of us, and they would have us all hop on a little bit early to have just that little few moments to stretch together, which would be what we would do normally when we got to the studio. Like, we'd have those few moments together to catch up and stretch and just reconnect as individuals. And so they still allowed us to have that time in each rehearsal, which was a huge help. But there's just that little bit of sadness, not in a bad way, but just that little bit of, there is a little bit of connection missing, because when you're on Zoom, you can see the other dancers and you really want to be playing off of their breath and their timing, but there's a delay on Zoom. So if you play off their timing, most times you're going to be late. So it's not really going to give you the best piece in the long run. But as much as possible, I give all thanks to Kate and Lynn for really establishing that intimacy in every way possible.
Great. Yeah, I mean, and Jessica, how about you? Because I know we use Zoom a lot, obviously, for meetings, and even in meetings I get frustrated, and that weird, like, you have that lack of connection of, like, you go to talk and someone else goes to talk, and then you have that moment of, no, you go, and then there's an awkward pause. Like, how did you overcome, like, were there instances of that in this process, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think Zoom just by nature yields those awkward moments. And even as Alice was mentioning, the process of learning material, there's the laptop camera or whatever device you're on doesn't capture your full body usually. So there's a lot of, I'm going to start with my camera up here to learn the torso, like the port de bras or the arm motion. And then I'm going to tip my camera down and I'm going to learn like the bottom half. Or, the Zoom screen is flipped. So Kate would be showing us a piece of phrase work and she's like, I'm not going to mirror you. I'm going to stay facing the camera. This is my right hand, even though it looks like my left. Like there's that, little brain moment where you're just adjusting. So I think that awkwardness is there for sure. But yeah, I think even in some of the minor little 2-group sections we would create, I had a little section with Darcy. In the breakout room, I still found that we were able to collaborate. We did a little improv to find our port de bras or like our arm sections. I think the biggest thing that was missing is partnering over Zoom. That's literally impossible. So I do miss that. I miss being given a task by Kate and Lynn, and we would break off into some duos or trios and then work on manipulating a piece of phrase work and then creating a partnering section. So I feel like that's one of the biggest losses with a process like this. But I think it's interesting then to play with how do we position boxes and how can we make things look woven together, even without that physical contact.
And was there anything that surprised you? Let's say in a good way. We've talked about the negative parts, not the negative, but the challenges of developing in this way. Were there any positive surprises about this new way of creating? Darcy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Anything positive that stuck out? You can say no. It's totally.
Honestly, that's a hard one right off the bat, and I would love if anyone else wants to comment on that.
I'll take that.
Go for it.
Well, I do think a little bit we worked faster. Like slightly, I think in the studio we have a little bit more time to goof off in the most loving way. And I don't mean that as like we are wasting time, but there's just like because during the Zoom rehearsals, most of the time we were all on mute. It wasn't as much of like a give and take. It was more of just like a sit there and learn everything, absorb it, and then ask your questions instead of as much of a back and forth, which tends to take more time in the studio. So I felt like we learned the piece a little faster, which wasn't a bad thing.
That surprises me. I thought it would take a little bit longer. Yeah, Jessica, go ahead. You had your hand up.
No, I'll just jump in. And I think what is interesting about this whole process and COVID in general, I think it's forced dance companies and all kinds of organizations to be creative with resources or tools and just methods that we would have never used before. And dance, for so long has sat in semi-limited forms, right? We've got a theater proscenium typically with the audience, and that's sort of how dance exists. Not everyone, obviously we've got dance film, people do interdisciplinary projects, there are other things, but that's sort of the standard. And And I think it's been interesting and it sort of forced dance companies to think outside the box. What are some other ways that we can move, that we can create, that we just haven't tapped into? So I don't actually think that's a bad thing. I think that's a way of advancing art and dance in general.
I love that. And that's a great segue into sort of the next sort of question I wanted to ask. I want to broaden this conversation a little bit. Now, obviously, the pandemic has devastated so many industries, definitely the performing arts and live performance all around the world. So I'd love to just get each of your personal insights on sort of the state of the community right now. I've been calling tonight an example of artistry and innovation and creation thriving during this time of separation and during, what is the scientific event, even though it's negative, of our lifetime. And so are you all seeing sort of that spirit throughout the community right now? How are people surviving? How are people thriving? What is the sort of emotional state of artists right now and in your experiences, in your bubble, in your community? Alice, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this kind of is like the complete opposite of what we're doing, which we're trying to make it as live as possible. But as Kate had mentioned in the very beginning, this is not a dance film, but lots of companies are going towards dance film. And something that I do enjoy about that is it allows another media of dance and art expression to be expressed. Like if you think about film, there's animation and then there's also live action, and they both have their pros and cons. I feel like in dance film, there are ways to almost simplify what your story is saying, or you can be more like, this is the detail I want you to see at this part of the choreography, so see this, and then you get the idea better. But at the same time, it's completely different to live performance where, as we've all said, we're breathing together and we feel each other, and that is just so powerful. And when you're in the stage, whether it's like proscenium or in the round or site specific, they're all very different. But in my circle, I'm seeing a lot of more dance film also because I'm a dance photographer and videographer as well. So I've actually done 3 dance films already.
Wow.
So, one of them I'm still editing, and one is actually coming out this Friday. And then one already came out like a month ago. So a lot of people in my circle have been going to dance film.
Alice, plug that release on Friday. Check it out. What is it? Now's your opportunity.
It's with Spark Movement Collective. I can try and maybe find a Facebook link or event, and maybe I can try and plug that in. But
Cool. Well, people can Google as well.
Yeah.
So that's great. Rivkins, how about you? How's your community within the industry doing?
It's been, for me, I'm mostly in the teaching perspective. It's crazy because I live in New York, but I teach a lot like in other cities. Like I used to teach in Alabama, Atlanta, Miami, Tallahassee. So it's very different for me because now it's like I'm teaching a lot on Zoom, which I'm okay with doing, but it's very different because I'm missing that like physical aspect of helping my students, because it's very different to say, okay, stretch your leg here in Zoom, but then are they actually really stretching their leg? Do you actually trust them that they're stretching their leg? So it's that part of me is like getting taken away, because I really enjoy being in the studio and actually getting the feel of like what I'm saying being transpired physically rather than just like looking at it in the computer. So that's me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Victoria, how about you? What is your perspective of artists and the spirit within the community currently?
To kind of repeat what everyone has said, I have noticed really a surge into dance filmmaking. And I've done a slight bit of that, but hope to do a little bit more. But as a whole, I do get the sense just from talking with other dancers and living with other dancers and just being around them constantly that it is just everyone's just like really kind of hitting their peak frustration with the limited space that they have. Taking like the amount of virtual opportunities to take class is amazing and wonderful. And I love that the community has come together like that. But like, you know, doing ballet in your living room and kicking your couch and your coffee table is only going to get us so far, and it's only going to be exciting for so long. So I do feel as a whole the community is really missing that aspect of just like open space rehearsal and class and performance, and having that connection with an audience or connection with a classmate or a teacher live. But I do admire everyone's just willingness to keep going with this virtual world, because it's what we've got right now.
Yeah. And so Alice, we heard a little bit about other work that Alice has been a part of during this time. How about the rest of you? Are any of you, including SYREN, Kate and Lynn, is there anything else that the company is working on? Are there any other projects that are happening during this time, either that are leaning into the virtual sphere or sort of leaning into the other, you know, whether it's socially distanced work or anything like that that you're all involved in or that you're seeing out in the world that's inspiring you? Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, well, I was just going to speak to some of us are teaching, and I've been very fortunate to have been in person for most of the fall at the two institutions. I teach at the Westminster School in Connecticut and the Nutmeg Conservatory, also in Connecticut. And they've both done a tremendous job with safety protocols and masking and testing. And it's the day I stepped back into at Westminster, they actually allowed us to use a gymnasium, and we were able to socially distance and tape squares and, you know, again, made it work. And it was as if like all my senses were like alive again. Just to be in person and share space and movement was treasured, perhaps more than ever before. So that really helped just sort of like balance my equilibrium.
Yeah.
We're going virtual, of course, now for a lot of the holidays, just for many reasons. But I remain ever the optimist, and I know we will be on the other side of this. In the meantime, I will be the biggest fan of Alice and many countless colleagues that are making incredible dance films. But I think we will stay true to our roots, do the best we can, and not shy away from the virtual experience, and use these tools because we need them. They're keeping us connected. We're moving, and that's what we have to do. But I firmly believe on the other side, there will be a theater again, and we will be performing for people in the flesh.
Yes, I love that. And Jessica, I heard through the grapevine that you may be involved in some sort of drive-through performance experience or drive-in experience. I've heard a lot about these happening and popping up all over the place. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually was in Canada when a first drive-through performance happened, but there's sort of a phase 2 remade or revamped extended version. So I think that's just another example of, you know, people are doing their best to try and be as creative. I'm already in a creative field, but be creative with how we present work. So in this case, it will be in a parkade, and vehicles will drive in and find their slot, and then the performance will take place kind of in that space in between all the vehicles up and down. So yeah, I think I've also heard a few people have tried some outdoor performances where they can socially distance, and obviously it's a little bit safer. Dancers are must. So I think people are, and the dance industry, I think, needs that. Anyway, like live performances sort of struggled, I think, for years prior to COVID. And people for a long time have been trying to find ways to make dance more sustainable. And as Lynn and Kate said earlier, bridge the gap, make dance more approachable, make people feel like they could attend a show and feel like it's not too elitist, or maybe they might be able to get it. I guess I've heard that a lot. Yeah, so I think that's really cool to see people jump out of their comfort zone.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all. It was really wonderful to hear everyone's insights. We're going to jump into the Q&A because the questions from the audience are rolling in. I just want to sort of take a few moments just to talk about the future of the piece. And Lynn, I'm excited to say, and hopefully you'll share with us a little bit more, that tonight's premiere of Thina was just the start. We at the museum will have the chance to continue to sort of highlight and share the development of this piece and of SYREN's work in the midst of this pandemic. So can you, Lynn, talk a little bit about what's coming up in the future with this piece and what can audiences expect?
I can do my best. What's so wonderful about partnering with James and everyone at MOS is that when Kate and I started talking about wanting to bring the company back together to create, because that was not in our plans for this year. We planned to be, last fall between September and December, we were in 4 or 5 different states touring and performing and teaching. And that was our plan for this season now. And so, but when everything changed, and when we started feeling moved to create again, one thing that was really important to us was to start to make something that could evolve through the phases of how we're able to work right now. And so that means if phase 1 is this, as you saw tonight, our hope for the second phase would be that at the very least, the dancers are together in some means. And so that happened to work out perfectly with talking with James and the programming there and allowing the evolution of Thina to grow with our appearances at MOS this season. But to be frank, 4 or 5 months ago, we didn't know what tonight was going to look like. So I can't tell you exactly what the spring will look like for the phase 2 of Thina, because Kate and I very much take it based on where the world is at when the time comes much closer. We come up with lots of different scenarios based on what's, of course, first and foremost safe for us and our dancers, and then what also rings the most true for the creative evolution of the work. But our biggest hope and dream is first and foremost to bring the dancers in the shared space so that we can at least cross through that threshold. And that in and of itself, even if we cannot touch, will make for a very different experience. So please do stay tuned and keep following. And I'm not trying to be, coy and keep things from you, but there's a lot to yet unfold about what comes next. But we're very excited to have a next. We have a what comes next to work on and to vision for, and that's why we exist as a company.
Well, we can't wait either, and we remain so thrilled and honored to be able to collaborate with such an incredible company, and I can't wait just personally to see what the next phase and iteration is. So everyone out there, if you enjoyed tonight, which I know you did, judging from all of the feedback coming in on Slido, you'll want to just keep an eye and an ear out. You can sign up for our mailing list. There will be a future event with SYREN as a part of our upcoming winter-spring season, which we will be announcing in just a few weeks. So we will be back and we'll be able to see how the piece has grown and hear from these incredible performers and artists as well. Okay, jumping into the Q&A. First question, do you plan on integrating Zoom into your future in-person live performances? So Kate, why don't you take that?
I hope not. No, I'm kidding. Hey, if there's a use for it, if we can find a way that feels, I think certainly for a while we'll be like hybrid space where, I think there will be limits to capacity once we get back in theaters and stuff. So I think it will remain a key tool for a while to help accessibility. And like Jess was saying, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. So I think we will use it as a tool, like we are now, like a way to get what we're doing out there, for sure. And I imagine, especially over the next year, it'll help the hybrid sort of realities.
Great. And there's a lot of questions about process and the challenges, so we hit a lot of those in the conversation. This is one just sort of, you mentioned, Lynn, the ultimate goal would be to have this performance happen live in front of an audience? If so, how will you still tell the story of this initial experience in doing it virtually? So how will this influence the in-person performance?
Sure. I mean, again, these are all my best guesses because we don't have it all mapped out yet. But one thing we have mused about is perhaps each phase will be a part of the final in-person for everyone experience. You know, maybe the Zoom recording will be played, or maybe we'll do it in a different part of the theater all through our screens, and then we'll come in and do it in the next phase. Maybe each one of the phases will be part of the final phase as one possible way of telling that story. Maybe there will be, you know, conversational elements like tonight, but I think in some way, definitely the different phases of the piece, I think will keep being part of the piece as we go along, for sure.
Great. All right. Next question. What were your emotions during making this? So I think that let's start with Darcy. What were your emotions, and you know, maybe when they first approached you about this piece or throughout the process?
Yeah, I think I hit on this a little earlier, just that first moment of celebration of being able to connect and really unite and share this virtual space together. But I mean, there's a lot of sadness and a lot of grieving, like this place that the shared studio that we aren't able to be in. So yeah, I think those opposites, I would say, are the bigger ones, but lots of smaller and in between ones as well.
And kind of the same question, but a little bit different. Was there any part of it that affected you the most emotionally in this process in creating? So were there any moments when Kate was sharing the inspirations that she was seeing out in the world and some of those photos that sort of tapped into anything emotionally to you as performers? Maybe resonating with what was obviously really happening in reality. Alice, anyone? And then Lynn?
Lynn, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Say.
The one thing that struck me throughout was the opportunity to connect via the music to these the artists of today that were singing the music in South Africa, singing the song arranged by a composer from today that's on the other side of the world, composed by someone who lived through another pandemic 100 years ago. You know, it's like standing in an ancient cathedral. You know, any sort of point of connectivity through human history where we're. I can't presume to say that my experience has been the same as Mr. Caluza's at all, but just to reflect on someone else in another time who lived through something somewhat like this experience was a kind of a poignant, overarching thing. And then emotions, one of the biggest emotions for me was after we performed on Friday and recorded it for you all tonight. It was really wonderful and bizarre, but there were moments during that recording where, you know, I felt like I was performing. You don't perform, you might not know, but there are these things that happen, you know, and you ride this wave, and there are these moments, even for all this where those things happen, and that was glorious, but then it was also really emotional, like Darcy was saying, and Victoria and other people, these bittersweet, where you kind of remember all that you have lost. And I'll say right after that I have much to be thankful for and have not lost nearly as much as many. But the loss of being able to do our work is great. And so there's a celebration of feeling that performance, but in the next breath, kind of just a real roller coaster of being happy and then sad about all that this kind of performance meant in this time.
And next question, did you record rehearsals in order to see what it looked like? Did you record?
Yes.
Yeah, that was actually a bulk of my work, was watching the rehearsals after the fact, because for me that was the more real-time experience after the fact, because when I'm rehearsing with them, I have the delay for myself watching them, but when I watch the recording, I could actually see them doing it with the music synced up. So it was kind of like after rehearsal, I would have more time to watch the recordings and figure out, what was happening in real time.
And this is the follow-up to that question. Was it at all freeing to not have to worry about syncing all of your timing, since maybe it wasn't as possible as it would be in a live performance?
No, it was not freeing, because we were trying to sync everything.
Great. I thought so. Great.
What's so bizarre is that as everyone's been saying, is we're always, we're hearing the music, but we're seeing each other in the space. But in this particular experience, we are actually not to look at each other in the screen and ignore, pretend we're kind of hearing the music play, and then I'm dancing in my room by myself. And that's not why I'm a dancer in a company, is to dance in the room by myself. So to not be able to look at each other was really not freeing at all.
Yeah. All right. Rivkins, the difference between keeping up your technique, your body work, and your practice pre-COVID and now, and where do you take class or do a practice?
Oh, wow. I take class in my room and I do practice in my room. And most of the time, I've been back and forth in between Miami and New York. So when I'm in Miami, I would work out outside, do little stretches outside, try to keep my body in shape, because, this whole COVID-19 gaining weight and stuff is real. And I just felt like I'm a mover naturally. I just love moving. I can't be still. So I just had to find a way to keep myself active throughout this whole process. And that's just all I could do, just stretch and just literally take the time. Now I have more time to get more into with my body. So actually take the time to stretch more, give myself a little ballet class every now and then, but not a full-on one, just do a couple of pliés and tendus, and just to see if I still got it, but just doing that whole thing.
Great. And Victoria, how about you? Any difference in keeping up your technique and your practice pre-COVID and now?
Definitely very different. I am lucky enough to be a Pilates instructor as well, so I was able to teach a lot of virtual Pilates classes, which helped to keep me in shape. But as far as virtual dance classes have gone, I'm sorry to admit that mine have been fairly few and far between. But just from lack of space, and I assume a lot of other dancers have felt this lack of motivation, but the weekly check-ins with SYREN and remembering why that I am part of this company and why I dance was always a huge help in getting me motivated, and adding in all those virtual classes back into my practice. And now luckily the Pilates studios are open, so I'm able to get on some equipment, and that has helped tremendously. So
someone is saying dance in VR, too far? Anyone? Is that the next plane? Is that the next sphere that we're going into?
Probably.
You could have this sweat spray, almost feel like it hits your VR goggles. I think that would be the ultimate, if you're in the front row of performance and you see that sweat flying on the Chanet sequence or something.
Next time in the spring, we're actually going to screen this event in our 4D theater. Hopefully people can be on site, and then they'll get I'm just kidding. Everyone at the museum is like, no, James. No. Two final questions. One is pretty quick that we've gotten a lot. I think people are curious about timeline. How long did it take to develop what we saw tonight, the performance we saw tonight?
We started meeting for official rehearsals on Zoom in September, I think. Is that right? Or beginning of October?
October.
Very, very quick. It was really a month. We typically kept it very concise and efficient, resource-wise, as Jess was mentioning earlier. Yeah.
Great. But it's not the end, and it's going to continue, I think, is the exciting part. So our last question for the night, it's kind of a deep one, but I think that I'd love to hear everyone give their quick thoughts. How can dance help us cope with the current pandemic? So is anyone brave enough to take that on first?
Sure.
Go ahead, Kate.
I mean, in the literal sense, moving in any form can keep our mind and body healthy. Like I deeply believe that. I'm a movement artist, so I think that waking up, touching your toes, taking your kids outside, doing some jumping jacks, acting like a spaghetti, like these things help us. They keep our body moving, and just moving itself is therapeutic. If you happen to be a dance artist, I think just the connection that we have in a lifetime of study of this craft and continuing to move sustains us. This sustains me as a human. So I don't know. So I think there's like just health and joy in moving your body, and also in connecting with other people.
I love that. Darcy, any thoughts on how dance can help us cope and survive through this time?
To quote a last piece of ours, we said a lot in this last Tick Tock piece. We said movement is the key, and that I think, rings true succinctly for all of us.
I love that. Alice, any thoughts?
Yeah, I feel that dance is everything, even when you're not dancing and you're just living your life, you can take in your environment, take in the sounds you're hearing or the colors you see, and it influences you to want to create or to hear things. Like, I'll just sing, and then when I can't sing, I'll dance. And then, I feel like when there's nothing to do, dance is it. And it's not just dance, but just being creative and expressing yourself. And dance is the purest form of expressing yourself. So I feel like dance, like health-wise, don't just like sit all day, move your head, wiggle and all. And, just do what makes you happy when you can. I feel like dance is just everything, even though that might sound kind of corny, but it's everything.
Love it. Victoria, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, dance has always felt like a home to me. And I think that a lot of people can use it as a sort of therapy because it helps my mental state, my emotional state, my physical state. And I think that can be applied to anyone. It doesn't matter if you have training or if you are just like alone in your kitchen. But it really is a therapy, and it can be a home when you feel like everything else is kind of a mess.
Yeah, which it is currently. Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, I think to echo some of that, just when, we've been inundated with so many images, so many words, so many statistics over the last 8 months or so. I know we sort of went into hiding in March, not hiding, but, isolation in March. I think dance is that one thing that doesn't require you to speak, and you can kind of shut your brain off for a second. So it's that where so many other things require you to hear and speak and all of those things, and it's just very tactile, and it's sort of back to your basic human instincts. Just what can I do? I can just move. I can feel my shoulders, I can feel my elbows, my hands in space, and I think it's almost a meditation that way. It's a way to escape from some of the chaos that has been the year.
For sure. And Rifkins, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely feel as though dance is just one of those things that just literally helps you forget. Like, we just are so involved in where we are at that moment that we're just releasing our bodies, that it's just like we don't really care about what else is going on. And even how we are now missing socially dancing. Like some of us are missing the clubs. Like, why do we miss the clubs? Because we had the energy of, like, if a song was playing, we had the energy to just let our bodies move and feel the energy of the crowd. So it's like, it definitely caused some people to also be aware to that. Like, how dance, not only us as performers helped us get through things, but also for them, like just socially going out and just having a good time with their friends. How it's like, that's a very important aspect of life too.
Great. And Lynn, any final thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I can offer anything new aside from, I was thinking, aligned with what Rivkin said. we're all saying this because in some ways we've trained to do it, but I think finding ways you can access movement in your life can be huge. And if that really isn't for you, then find a dance company online. There's lots of them, and watch dance and buy a ticket and watch a show, or watch a dance film. There's so many things out there right now to see. If movement is for you, then maybe find your connection to it by watching us or some of our colleagues, because there's many people out there who are like us, and we just have to do. And if that means we're dancing in our kitchens, on the table, on the bed, out on the porch, in the streets, we're going to keep doing it. But we need you to keep watching it, because that's when our process is complete, is when we have people to share it with. So either move yourself or connect to people who do move, and hopefully that heart will beat just a little bit stronger and more steady than it did before.
It's a perfect way to end the night. Thank you to all of you for being here and sharing not only your talent, but all of these incredible insights with us. It's been a joy. Any final thoughts, Kate and Lynn? Where can people learn more about SYREN? Where can people support SYREN and support the future work of Thina?
Yes, thank you so much, James, and everyone at MOS. Yes, of course, you can find SYREN at syrendance.org, our website, syrendance.org support. You can follow us on Instagram at SYRENDance. But please keep in touch. Drop us an email, drop us a message. We really are nothing without an audience. So thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to stand with dance. And please keep doing it, and keep doing it when we are back in the theater, because or on the streets, or wherever form you can host it in person, because we'll also really need you then.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you to our funders and our sponsors tonight, the Lowell Institute, for making tonight possible, as well as the rest of the programming this season. And thank you to everyone out there watching, spending your Wednesday night with us, and for spending the entire fall and summer and spring with us as we continued this virtual programming. As I said, we wrap up this fall season tomorrow with one more great event, but we will be back in January. So we hope to see you all then. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay well. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.